would make in our life if we practiced joy instead of pitching. A brief interruption. For now, one of the added benefits of employing the frontal lobe to quiet the other centers in the brain and focus on mental rehearsing is that we interrupt the programs that are routinely running all the time. We shut them down cold. When meditators are fully focused on an idea, the other parts of the brain receive no blood flow. No blood flow means no activity in that area. No activity on a neurological level means the mind that is usually produced is now turned off. Just as when we lean on our hand in the grass for too long, and the blood flow gets interrupted briefly, and our hand goes numb. The same thing happens in the brain. If we were to cut off the blood supply to an area of the body for a prolonged period of time, that body part would die. That doesn't literally happen in the brain. Instead, when we repeatedly interrupt the blood flow, when the electrical activity in that portion of the brain, or more specifically in that neural network, ceases, the neurons no longer fire. To examine Hebb's law again, it is also true that when neurons no longer fire together, they no longer wire together. That means if we slow ourselves down, get our mind focused on specifics of who and how we want to be, and start to put a mental image of that new person in the sights of the frontal lobe, or mentally practice a new act of any nature, by our cognitive effort, we get a double bonus. Not only are we able to wire new circuits, but also prune the previously hardwired connections. Do you recall the Braille readers we mentioned, whose functional brain scans revealed a remarkable adaptability? These people had lost their sight and learned to read through touch. What is important to remember is that the centers normally used for seeing in a sighted person are converted to touch circuits in the non-sighted person. Eventually, many of those old circuits the person once employed to see become severed. The neural growth factor that bound them together was then used to cement the bonds of the newly developed circuits. This demonstrates an important corollary to the fire together, wire together mantra. When we interrupt certain thought processes repeatedly, nerve cells that no longer fire together will no longer wire together. The good news is that those nerve cells don't want to remain inactive. Instead, they seek out new connections, and they use recycled neural growth factor to attach themselves to new neurons. It's a shuffle. Neural growth factor is exchanged from one set of old circuits to a set of new circuits. We can take those old patterns and the sequences we routinely fired and reuse the neural growth factor in forming new and improved patterns and sequences, bonding the synaptic connections to cement the new connections we are forming. For example, let's imagine we've decided to mentally rehearse patience with our children. After we ask the big questions, the what-if types, our mind will begin to formulate a model of who we want to become. Through mental rehearsal, attention, and repetition, and by firing new neural networks in new patterns, we cause communities of neurons to wire together in new combinations to create a new level of mind, called patience. As the nerve cells gang up and wire together, those old circuits, which formerly wired us to lash out verbally at the slightest provocation, stop firing together and will unwire over time, because we won't be using those circuits any longer. Our brain uses the same materials through repetition, association, and mentally rehearsing our new responses to familiar situations to wire new circuits of patience in place of the old circuits of petulance. We lose our old mind of impatience and make a new one of patience. Our neural network is replaced by a new one. The astounding fact is that the brain will accommodate our free will by erasing the old synaptic footprints and making new ones. This is the true biology of change. Here's how that works. For 3